Hey folks, it's Arleman. Today we're going to do a short video on putting together a solid deck for Mobius Final Fantasy. Now, it's important to know that single player and multiplayer are completely different, but some of the basic rules you learn in single player do carry over into multiplayer. I'm just going to go over the basics and things to consider when you're building a deck, both for single player and multiplayer. I'm just going to go over an attacker because they're pretty easy to learn. Breakers, there's a lot more theory, and they operate completely differently in multiplayer than they do in single player. In single player, just about anything you throw together will work. I mean, it might not work well, but it'll work. I'm just going to give you the foundations and explain the different kinds of cards. So the very first thing that you should do is you need to decide what job you want to play. If you are a free-to-play player, you're going to start with the Onion Knight. You've got all your sub jobs here that you can choose. It doesn't give you access to any of those specific weapons, but we're going to go best case scenario. I'm going to show you guys what I use, and hopefully you guys can learn something from it. So I'm going to take Balan Mercenary. All right. Now, the Balan Mercenary is a fire, wind, and dark user. He is I've got really good dark cards, so I'm going to focus on those for my primary attack. And the reason why, when you have a job, what you can do is if you hold down your mouse button or hold down your finger on the picture, it'll tell you what the job does. And it'll also tell you what its actual abilities are. These are not based on the card, this is based entirely on the job. So the Balan Mercenary, as you see here, has enhanced fire, wind, and darkness. We're going to focus on the darkness, okay? It also has Painful Break, Exploit Weakness, and Improve Criticals. These are important. Just remember these, keep these in the back of your head. Exploit Weakness and Improve Criticals. Alright? Now we're going to choose our weapon. Now, I have upgraded the weapon, modified the weapon a couple of times, so I've actually unlocked 3 of its abilities, but we have Improve Criticals and Exploit Weakness. It's starting to... sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, that's right. So, as you can see now, our Exploit Weakness is now up to plus 100%, and our Criticals are up to plus 81%. We can go even further with that. So, without further ado, when you're making a deck, you have 4 slots available and you have a rental in single player. Don't rely on your rental, because rentals can be very random, and especially if you choose Quick Start, it'll choose whatever card it wants to, and a lot of times it doesn't make any sense. So since we've decided that I've got a bunch of really strong dark cards, we're going to use that. So we're going to choose our attack cards first. So I've got all the nice ones. We've got Centaur, we've got Unbreakable Bonds, which is the Supreme card, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to choose one over the other. I mean, it is a Supreme, but if you look at this with Centaur, okay, high damage card, good crit chance, mediocre break power, and most high attack cards have mediocre break power. If you have both, then they do both okay. Nothing particularly great, but generally if you have high attack, you have miserable break. If you've got high break, you've got miserable attack. Alright, so with Centaur, Enhanced Darkness plus 10, Enhanced Darkness plus 4. So that's 14 on top of the 100 we already have. Alright, but let's look at Unbreakable Bonds. We have plus 15 plus 4, so we automatically have plus 19. So we already have a boost that's higher. And of course, since it's a Supreme, its attack is redonkulous. But not everybody has access to a Supreme card. But just take this into account when you're looking at the cards that you have. What are your auto abilities and how do they complement your job? So we're going to go ahead and choose Unbreakable Bonds. Now, next we need to choose a card that allows us to make sure we have regular access to Dark Orbs so we can use this sweet card. This comes in the shape of either a Primal Boon card, a Shift card, or a Force card. Now, the difference is a Primal Boon card will fill all of your empty orbs with the appropriate element. A Shift card will will shift all of your current cards, or your current orbs, to the elements. A force card will pretty much make all of the orbs that you pull with subsequent hits the same. I believe that's how it works. There are three different kinds, but the Primal Boon, you've got the Primal Boon, you've got the Force, and you've got the Shift. The main takeaway is you need a generator for the orbs that you're going to use to attack. Personally, I like using the Primal Boon because I have access to it, and it has really good break power. It has really good break power, so I can actually use this to help get rid of that pesky yellow bar. Alright. So I've got my attack card. I have my source of attack. Now, next, you want a debuff or a buff card. Generally, for an attacker, you want a debuff card. They come in two flavors. You have what's called a BDD card, which stands for Break Defense Down, which makes the enemy easier to break, and you have a CRR card, which stands for Critical Resist Down. That decreases your enemy's resistance to critical strike. Now, as you can see with the Bala Mercenary, we have a very high crit chance. Let's see here. We have Improved Criticals plus 81%, and we have a card that has kind of a mediocre crit chance. Now, if we went with Centaur has a very good crit chance, lower attack power. So your mileage may vary, it just kind of depends on what you have available. So we have, it would probably be in our best interest to have a card that decreases our enemy's resistance to crit, because we have a high damage card with a low chance to crit, but we have a weapon and abilities that give us a very high crit chance. So we want to support that card by debuffing the enemy even further. So let's see what I have here. I do not have an area of effect CRR card, but I do have a single target. This is nice because it not only does it lower critical resist, it also decreases defense against break. So I get a BDD and a CRR card. Not to mention the fact that it's got decent attack, decent break power, and I can spam it every time, and it's fire, so I can use it. So single target works well. Alright, this is if we really wanted to maximize the single target damage, because Unbreakable Bonds is a single target. It is not an area of effect. Alright, so this kind of makes sense. Now, if you wanted to go with more of an area of effect, because Odin, which is our source of dark, is area of effect, you could go with Bahamut. Bahamut is an AoE. And it actually lowers defense against break for all of the enemies. So you could go with that as well. But those are the flavors. You know, when you look at your card, you really want to look at what your debuffs are. If it's a critical, lowers a critical resist or defense. Now, there are cards that will actually give you buffs as well that are not support cards, but that generally tends to be more along breakers. So now we have to choose a support card. Support cards are life orbs. The thing with support cards is life orbs are not something that you generate regularly. There are certain abilities that you can get, either what's called prismatic draw, which a prismatic orb can be used as any element. Some jobs have an increased chance to draw life orbs. So for an attacker, bear that in mind, because the cost of your support cards vary dramatically. For warrior, I very much recommend the warrior trance card if you have it, which increases all of your stats for several turns. It's only 2 orbs to cast with a 3 orb cooldown, and it also has an ability ignition, which increases the magic power of your next ability for 25%. So once your enemy is broken, you pop this and your primary attack card, and you just watch the numbers fly. This is attack and magic ignition. All the trance cards have it. If you don't, Knights of the Round is also always a good choice. Knights of the Round is available on the ability shop, and this increases attack, faith, magic, and boost. So it's suitable for all 3 job types, but it's a little bit more expensive. It costs a total of 3 life orbs, and it doesn't have that ability ignition. So take that into account as well. You also have options of haste. Haste is always a good choice. It increases your actions for several turns, so it means you can go more times per turn. All right. You have other more incidental support cards, but basically a Trance card or Knights of the Round or a Haste are always solid choices. Okay, so we're just going to go with our Trance card. So looking at our deck, we have a buffer card, a card that will buff our abilities. We have an attack that will debuff the enemy. All right, both break and the resistance to critical. We have a card that allows us to force orbs, and we have oh my god, huge hitting damage attack. Now, Supremes are not you don't have to have a Supreme. You can do just fine with Centaur if you have access to it, but you want to capitalize on the strengths that you have. You got to take into account what's on the cards, not just what their stats are, but what your auto abilities are, because all this stuff adds up. Custom skills is another layer. We'll talk about that in another video. But now that we have our cards there, we can look at our auto and we can see how things have changed. So because of what we've had on the card, we have attack up plus 5%. We have an increase in fire damage. We have an increase in dark damage. We have an increase in painful break. We have a 105% increase in exploit weakness, 90% increase in criticals. We can auto charge our ultimate plus 3 every time. Okay, so there you go. We have an incredibly strong single target focused dark attacker. You can actually also do pretty solid damage also with the fire card as well, but its primary role in your deck is to debuff the enemy. So in review, support card, debuff card, Orb Driver, attack card. And that's it. There are a lot more nuances involved, but that's the cut and dry. You look at what you got, and see if you can put together something based on the elements that you have. But again, if you have if you've got a good attack card, a source of orbs, a debuff card, and a solid support card, you're set. And that will actually pull into multiplayer as well. There are more options as far as single target versus area of effect, but those are the basics. Anyway, I hope this video has been helpful. Until next time, Arleman out.